welcome to Teacher Development webinars.
Thank you, Amanullah. So let me, this will stop other screen sharing. Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome. Greetings from Leicester. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Where are you based? Can you type in the chat? I mean, you have already, some of you say here, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Yorkshire, Helen, okay, Scotland, Yorkshire, where else? Egypt. Okay, fantastic. So keep them coming. I must confess, I'm very, very happy to be giving this session, this webinar for teacher development webinars, as it is a topic very, very close to my heart. And I've been researching and writing about it for years. It is quite topical too. I'm sure you will agree, as with coronavirus and the shift to online teaching and online modalities, digital literacies and competencies and skills have become more relevant than ever. So about me, just very short, because Amanullah gave me an introduction. Thank you very much, Amanullah. Just to say that I'll be speaking wearing all these hats, very much of what I'll be talking about comes from research, but also classroom experience and training experience. And I'm going to share at the end my contact details so that you can connect with me and follow my work if you want. But for now, if you're going to be tweeting, if you are on Twitter, if you are on Instagram, here are my handles here. So Sophia Mav and Sophia.Mavridi. So let's get started. Just to say that the particular session was named after my chapter in the book English for 21st Century Skills. So if you have read the chapter, the session will help you to consolidate what you have read. If you haven't read it, it will give you a good idea of what it is about. So just a short overview. So we're going to identify digital divides, first of all, and then define digital literacies. Then I'm going to talk about the framework that I developed, then how digital literacies can bridge the new digital divide, and then I will provide, especially during the pandemic, they mediate our lives, our work, they affect the way we learn, the way we communicate, the way we do conferences and webinars and seminars. They give us access to unprecedented amounts of information and connectivity. But because of this power, uneven access to technology can amplify, can make bigger existing social, cultural, and economic inequalities, which creates the so-called digital divides. So only 4 years ago, before the pandemic, of course, numbers were showing that the digital divide, the gap between those who have access to the internet and those who didn't, still existed, and it was concerning. And those affected the most were, of course, the poor countries. So around 30% of people worldwide did not have, back in 2017, did not have access to the internet. Nearly 9 out of 10 of them live in Africa, Asia, or the Pacific. But this doesn't mean that the digital divide doesn't concern all of us, even in high connectivity places like the USA, the UK, Europe. The numbers show digital divides and inequalities that still exist. And more recent statistics looking at global connectivity are alarming. So according to this report, in the global population, only 24% have access to fast internet, 46% have access to moderate internet, and 74% to low-speed internet. But look at the difference between the developing countries and the developed countries. Isn't this an alarming digital divide in 2021? So what did this mean before the pandemic, and what does it mean during the pandemic? How many people were deprived of connectivity and education? We talk about learning online and the pedagogy, and this is my area, of course, and my specialism, and I train and consult people and institutions to design pedagogically sound courses. But online learning relies on technology, relies on access, relies on fast internet. So the number one thing is connectivity. People who are not connected cannot learn online, even if our pedagogy is brilliant. So without access to decent bandwidth and devices, there is no learning really. So this is the digital divide as we know it, and it is concerning. But today I'm not going to be talking about this divide. I'm going to talk about another digital divide, a digital divide that is emerging. So the new digital divide separates those who can use technology in a creative, responsible, and sophisticated way, and those who cannot. So again, this digital divide existed before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, it became apparent, it became clear. So between two people who both have access to technology, one may know how to use technology well, and we're going to be talking about what we mean well, use technology well. So one might know how to use technology well. One might be digitally literate and one might not. So let's have a look at the numbers and what I mean by the digital literacy divide. So, okay, I'm just having a look at the chat. Great. So students are asked to use technology to do research, and we language teachers, we ask them to use technology, of course, to do the research, but only 2% of children have the critical literacy skills that they need to tell if a news story is real or fake, according to this survey in the UK. So not everything that exists online is reliable or true. I'd say much of the content that we see is poor, is fake, is unreliable, and it looks like our students, our kids, or perhaps ourselves do not have the skills to tell fake from real. And as I suggested, not only kids, fake news concerns everyone who doesn't have the digital literacy to tell fake from real, not just our students. So next, I said earlier that people are very, very connected. Our students are very connected, but how do they use this connectivity? So 15 to 17-year-olds in Europe go online to connect with their friends and find new friends, to play games, to watch videos. And don't get me wrong, these are all extremely important and they saved the day during the pandemic. But creative expression and activities related to civic engagement are considerably low, as you can see. They're low. So these are important and creative opportunities, and kids seem to not have the literacies needed to take advantage of them. And of course, we have cyberbullying. Cyberbullying continues to be of concern. 6 to 25% of young people in the UK. And I'm sure this extends elsewhere, not just in the UK. It just so happens that my statistics are more Europe centered, if you like. So 6 to 25% of young people in the UK say that they have been bullied. So this is a summary of various reports, hence the discrepancy. What we know for sure is that the psychological and social impacts of cyberbullying on children and young people are potentially severe and long-lasting. And what we also know is that cyberbullying has no location. I dare say it's worse than bullying. So it can happen anywhere. It can follow you everywhere. So people who are cyberbullied say that they cannot escape, even when they are at home. And the more connected you are, the more exposed you are to cyberbullying. If you don't have the literacies, of course, to deal with it proactively and reactively. And of course, we have digital distractions. So technology, despite the opportunities, can be distracting to students. The way the algorithm works is geared towards creating FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a condition, but pushes people to over-connect. So if you check your phones, for example, every 5 minutes, chances are you have FOMO, and most young people have it, as these and other papers show. So the thing is, how do we respond to this? So long before the pandemic, here I am at a keynote in London at BED conference in January 2020, where I talked about digital distractions, and you can find the recording in the references. But this was not the first time. I've been talking about the digital distraction since 2016, actually, and I've been arguing that managing digital distractions is a learning skill that needs to be developed in the context of learning, and that by banning devices, we also deprive students of the opportunity to develop the skills in the context of learning. I don't know what the school policies were where you are before the pandemic, but in the UK, France, Greece, Spain, the governments were enacting laws and policies banning mobile devices, mobile phones across all schools, treating the symptom, not the problem. So students are distracted. So what are we going to do? We're going to ban the phones. We're going to not allow the phones. So I've talked and written about all these many times. And that was the last time I talked about that. I gave a keynote face-to-face. That was the last time I talked about this topic face-to-face. And then the pandemic happened in March 2020. That was in January 2020. And it was the same educational systems that asked students to move online and use their devices for learning And they were blaming the students for being distracted by Instagram, by TikTok, by YouTube, instead of focusing on the lesson. But then they could not simply ban the devices from the classroom because the classroom was in their devices. So lots of questions come up here, which bring us to the changing role of literacy. What does it mean to be literate in the 21st century? So typically, perhaps in the 20th century, being literate meant the ability to read, to write, to understand numbers. But from cognitive science, social linguistics, computing, digital humanities, scholars seem to agree that the concept of literacy in the 21st century is increasingly changing to include new skills and values and literacies associated with the role of technology in human life. So it is difficult to speak anymore about the offline and the online world as two separate things. And I think the pandemic made this clear, that the online and offline worlds intersect increasingly to become one world, where we work, we learn, we communicate, we have conferences, we have webinars, etc. So if we perceive literacy not as something static, not as a static ability to deal with texts, I can read, for example, but as an intellectual empowerment, which can change people cognitively, socially. So in the same way, digital literacy and digital literacies cannot be seen as just the skills for using computers. It is so much more than this. So let's define it. Let's define it. So I find this definition very, very comprehensive, and I think it hits home for us language teachers. So the skills to use digital literacies are the skills to use, create, and critique digital technologies, and the knowledge to critically understand the structures and syntax of the digital world, and to be confident in managing new social norms. So we are not talking only about knowing how to use computers, how to use social media, how to click this button and how to click that button, and all these amazing things that need technical skills. You also need to understand the syntax and the structures and critique information and manage social norms in order to live and navigate the world that we live in. So the problem is that this intellectual empowerment that digital literacies bring about won't happen just because we use technology or just because we have access to computers. So research overwhelmingly confirms that exposure to technology does not equal understanding technology. Just because we are online doesn't mean that we have this deep understanding that I just described. And even before the pandemic, our students spent 3 to 4 hours online per day, but they still got distracted, fell for fake news, were cyberbullied, plagiarized, didn't know how their data was used online, etc. And there is no such thing as digital natives either. We need to debunk this myth. So the term was coined by Prensky back in 2001, 20 years ago, to refer to the distinction between the young and the old. But recent papers, and Prensky himself acknowledge that such dichotomy oversimplifies things. And the empirical data and evidence suggests that the picture is far more complex. So fluency, exposure, technical competence don't mean digital literacy. Just because we can click buttons doesn't mean that we are digitally literate. So then we talked about what is not digital literacy. Yeah, I can see your comments now, and they're all very, very insightful. So we talked about what is not digital literacy. So what is digital literacy? This is the complete framework, and we will take a closer look in a bit in an interactive way. So be prepared to participate as well. So if you want to read the whole chapter, you will find it in my latest book, English for 21st Century Skills. And we're going to take a look at all these literacies, but just to clarify that all these literacies are important. We need them all. Our students need them all. But of course, we need to be realistic about what we can do and what we cannot do as language teachers, or as teachers if you're not teaching languages. So the idea here is not to turn our language students into digital literacy experts. That would be unrealistic. But I see two aims here for us language professionals. So first, to equip the students with the skills, the learning skills that they need to learn a language. They need these skills to learn a language in the 21st century. And second, to help them to develop one of the most important set of 21st century skills. And in this way, to make learning more relevant to them. So these are the skills and competencies that students need now and will need in the future. And someone might ask, or might say that, yes, okay, but we can learn a language without being digitally literate. I mean, how did people learn languages in the past? And my answer is, yes, of course. Of course you can learn a language without being digitally literate. But then this raises other questions. What is a language? What does it mean to learn a language? Are languages separate from the world that we live in, or do they reflect cognitive and social norms and interactions? So that's a big discussion, but I think that my answer is obvious. So we're going to take a look at these literacies, and I want to hear from you now. So get ready to interact. So first, access and core IT skills. What do these literacies involve? Can you give me some examples? So we're going to talk about these literacies separately, and we start from access and core IT skills. What do we mean by this? Any ideas? Can you please type in the chat? Data analytics. Yes. I would say that data analytics may be a little bit more advanced skills to be able to have access, first of all, and then use them, because it's not just about having access to learning analytics. So I would say, in my opinion, I would say this is not basic, this is more advanced. So how to problem solve when things go wrong with programs? Yes, 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 Helen. Improve critical skills, machine learning and cloud computing, being able to filter information. Yes. Use of technology, cybersecurity, improve community, more advanced coding. Okay. So thank you. That's fantastic. So I would say I would start from more basic skills, basically. So I would say that this is where we start from. I would include access to fast and affordable internet, as well as devices, and confidence in using basic IT skills. So for some students, this is where they need to start from. And I don't mean that they need to have the latest iPad or MacBook. No. But they do need decent bandwidth to be able to develop digital literacies. And of course, before the pandemic, if a student didn't have fast internet at home, they could go to a cafe or library. Unfortunately, COVID has exposed many disparities and divisions in this regard. And I live and work in the UK, and not all my students have the same access to decent internet and devices. So I would say that this is something that COVID-19 made clear, that 20 years into the 21st century, there's still huge digital divides between those who have access to technology and those who do not. So this is something that society and all of us need to work on after the pandemic. This should be the priority, because this is where we start from. So moving on, participation and collaboration. What do students need to know to participate effectively online? So what skills do they need? What competencies? What literacies? Communication skills? Yes, Nahrin. So what does this mean? When we say communication skills, what do we mean? Engagement, Jim? Yes. Technology skills? Yes, Laila. In what way? Can we be more specific? Use of digital tools such as Padlet? Yes, Lucy, of course, because this is a way to communicate. Empathy, Nahrin. Yes, empathy. Of course, we need empathy to communicate with people, of course. Prepare activity. Students know about how to use learning tools, knowledge. Excellent, thank you very much. Turn-taking, Helen, of course, to communicate, we can't talk all together. And of course, it becomes more challenging to do so online, to turn-take online. So it needs a different set of literacies. So thank you very much. So participation and collaboration literacies, of course, as you said, can provide students and everybody with the skills and mindset, not only the skills, to use shared productivity tools. You mentioned Padlet, absolutely. I would say Google Drive, Microsoft tools for collaboration, to communicate and collaborate effectively online from different locations, via text, via video, audio, understand different genres and codes of digital interaction. For example, email versus text. There are different codes of communication there. And use of emoticons as paralinguistic features to show emotion. Otherwise, text can be misunderstood, and there have been lots of misunderstandings of tone because people didn't have the literacies to just use a smiley, to show that they're joking, for example. Respect diverse cultural norms, empathy, as you said. You don't post 10 selfies a day, because we know that this is bad taste, and it comes across as desperate. And I'm not here to criticize anyone. I'm just talking about understanding codes and digital cultures. So we know how to build digital networks to participate in professional and social life, and so on and so forth. So participation and collaboration literacies are very important. So what about creativity and innovation here? So what can language students create with technology, and why is it important? If you're not a language teacher, then just focus and reflect on your discipline. So what can language students create with technology? Over to you. Audio and video, Helen, thank you. to practice speaking, absolutely. Writing skills, Jim, multimodal meanings, excellent. Blogs and vlogs, thank you, Helen. Vlog is with video, excellent. So they can create all of these amazing things. And why is it important? Why is it important for students to create? Do we want to make them technology experts? Why is it important for students to create? Use Flipgrid app for communication. Excellent, Fatma. Fantastic. Fantastic. It is important for now. Reading, writing, listening, and reading. Imtiaz. I'm sorry I pronounced your name wrongly, but you were spot on. So creativity and innovation literacies, yes, yes, yes. They can equip students with the competencies of designing, remixing, creating, curating digital media and resources, web pages, as you said, images, audio, video, music, apps, graphics, coding is a great literacy. But this doesn't mean, of course, that we all need to know how to code. So very, very relevant to us is using technology to support research and problem solving while respecting copyright and authorship, being able to synthesize online information into their own original argument. So do our students have these literacies? They might be able to design and remix, but how can we use this for language learning? And can they remix by respecting authorship and ownership? We know that students plagiarize. They just copy paste, pass it off as their own. Many times they don't plagiarize because they're lazy, but because they lack these literacies. So identity and well-being. The question is, what are the challenges that students may face regarding digital well-being, responsibility, and safety? Over to you. Turnitin helps. That's a very, very big discussion about Turnitin and how ethical it is. That's a very big discussion. It definitely helps reactively, not proactively, I would say. So cyberbullying, single out if lack, what was that? It goes so far. Single out if lack in communication skill. Yes. FOMO. Yes, Ellen, absolutely. So controlling the amount of time we spend in front of mobile devices. Absolutely, absolutely. And so much more. So thank you very much. So screen time, yeah, you all talk about screen time, and I agree with you. Pressure to appear happy and successful on social media, Helen, yes, spot on, absolutely. You need a different set of literacies to be able to deal with these trends, that everybody appears very, very happy and you feel miserable comparing yourself to other people. Yes, so there are very, very important questions here about our students' well-being. So these literacies are about, of course, understanding the reputational implications of digital identity, both opportunities and risks. We should not be focusing on risks only, and being resilient to risks, because we cannot avoid risk. For example, managing digital distractions. Technology, despite the enormous opportunities, is chronically distracting us. This is true. We cannot avoid it if we are exposed to technology, but we can deal with it. We can be resilient. So developing a positive digital footprint, of course, handling cyberbullying and trolling, both reactively and proactively. Apart from mechanisms and helplines and support, that's maybe the school system's responsibility, not ours. We need to develop kids and students and young people's and our students of any age ability to deal with cyberbullying. to know how to report it, to know that they should not be scared, because this is what bullies and trolls want, but they need to be able to deal with it both proactively and reactively. So this is easier said than done. And this is why raising awareness is not enough. Students need the skills and the mindset to do that. And what Helen mentioned about comparing ourselves, we hear stories about anorexia, for example, and how girls want to look like skinny models, and what effect this might have on their health. So all these, of course, are alarming, and there are things that we can do as teachers, because all this is very relevant to our students' reality. So last but not least, digital criticality. What does it mean for language students, and what do they need to be able to do? Digital criticality. Identifying fake news. Thank you. What else? Bias. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Absolutely. Strategy games. Yes, Jim. Yes. Excellent. So digital criticality, of course, as you very, very well said, using internet for educational purposes, recognizing reliable sources, absolutely. So as you very well said, this literacy equips students with the skills and confidence that they need to assess source reliability, to analyze, to interpret information online. And with the onset of COVID-19, the ability to identify fake news has become more than ever a matter of life and death. And some people may ask, digital criticality is critical thinking, isn't it? So what's new here? So my answer is no, not only. Because you need to know the digital well. My dad is a great critical thinker, but he is not. His digital criticality is very, very low. So because messages and information and content come out in various forms, not just text, it can be links, hyperlinks, pop-ups, video, it can be sound, image, photoshopped image. So you need to know the digital media, the digital part well to develop this digital criticality. So, and about echo chambers, the last one, what is echo chambers? Do you know? Clickbaiting, yes, absolutely, Helen. So what is echo chambers? I'm admitting people, Amanullah, I don't know if I'm doing well. So when everyone in one space says the same thing, echoing each other, absolutely. So absolutely, yes. So the information that we consume online is becoming increasingly mediated by filter bubbles, algorithms whose job is to make content increasingly personalized for us. So they're guessing what the user might like to see. Another example is our personal learning networks. I can see many of you from my personal learning network, and we learn from one another, and we tend to follow people that are like-minded, and rightly so. I want to follow people and be followed by people who are like-minded. However, this creates online environments that are populated by essentially agreeable information. We agree. We all agree with one another. And these are our echo chambers. So echo chambers are not new. They exist offline, of course, as well as online, but the exposure and reach is so massive online that it has given echo chambers a whole new meaning. So understanding when you are in your bubble and when you're not is essential. And also from time to time, breaking out of our echo chambers and being exposed to more diverse ideas and perspectives is a major digital literacy that needs a high level of criticality, I would say. So echo chambers cannot be avoided, but, and as I said, I want to follow like-minded people, but they need a certain level of criticality. Otherwise, they can lead to polarization and misinformation. And we've seen a lot of this lately. So let me check the time. Yes. So we are okay with time. So what can we do? How can we integrate these amazing digital literacies in the language classroom? So I would say my approach is, my view, my take on that is that task-based learning, project-based learning are my preferred approaches to integrate digital literacies, because the primary focus of every activity is the meaningful task, while the language is the instrument that students use to complete the task. So this is one way that I would suggest. The other way that I find particularly useful, especially during the pandemic, or a little bit, after, as we moving out of the pandemic, when we don't have the time to redesign the approaches and the syllabus. So the other way, the next best thing is bite-sized digital literacies, small chunks that may take 10 minutes from your lesson, but they will make such a big difference. So I'm going to give some examples, or perhaps one example one example of such a task. But it can be adapted, and you can adapt it to the literacies that your students might need. So set a task and ask them to produce something following a task-based learning approach. Of course, this something will depend on the level of the students, the digital literacy that you want to integrate, etc. So I cannot be prescriptive. As an example, you might ask students to create how-to podcasts, for example, or story podcasts. It can be used with young learners. It can be used with university students. I teach at university, and my students create podcasts in this way. So students work in groups to create short how-to podcasts. They can use a simple podcasting tool. It is not the tool, but the design of the activity that matters. Tools do not create learning. Activities do, teachers do. So depending on the level, it can be how to make a recipe, how to keep your study space organized. When you're learning online, for example, how to stay safe online, how to use a technology or an app, not for learning. They just create the podcast, and of course they are going to learn to develop so many digital literacies. How to create Instagram stories. It can be anything. So students create the podcasts and share them on the school, the class LMS, Moodle, Edmodo, Google Classroom, whatever you're using. And then they are also required to listen to other groups' podcasts and give feedback to at least two other students, two other groups, sorry. So give feedback, comment. This will be easier if you give them some criteria. Don't overload them with criteria. 3 things to, to facilitate their feedback. So what I love about this project this approach is that it ticks all the boxes. It can be part of their assessment too. So they can develop collaboration, digital collaboration, creativity, scaffolding each other. Even if it doesn't go well, they can reflect on what didn't go well and understand that collaboration is not easy. It is a skill that they need to develop. It is a 21st century skill. It is a digital literacy. So now, closing. My last message. With machine learning, and I'm very happy that some of you mentioned artificial intelligence and machine learning in the comments. So with machine learning, artificial intelligence, translation tools becoming increasingly accurate and sophisticated, there has been a lot of discussion as to whether people will actually need to master a foreign language at all. Remember, now I'm addressing language teachers. So for example, with tools such as Google Translate and Microsoft Stream, why would people need to learn English in the not so distant future? So all these will in fact continue to generate a lot of concern in the near future. But my answer to this is that machines will never be able to teach values and empowering literacies such as the ones that we looked at today. And not only this, other 21st century skills as well, such as empathy, inclusion, well-being, leadership, adaptability, etc. So computers are and will always be most effective at performing routine tasks. The kind of teaching and assessing that very, very probably will no longer need people to do. We won't need people to do repetitive tasks, routine teaching, multiple choice, for example. This will be done via machines in an excellent way. So I think if we realize this, then we will stop perceiving technology as a threat to our profession, but as a powerful ally that can play an instrumental role in our efforts to develop students' language skills and the new literacies that we talked about today. Computers will never be able to do that. So thank you very, very, very much for being so interactive and amazing. So here are the references, slide A for references, if you want to take a picture of the references, although the recording will be available, so you can stop it at any time and take a picture of the recording. And this is slide B of the references. And if you want to refer to this presentation, feel free to do so. Here is the citation. And thank you very, very much. So here are my contact details if you want to connect with me, if you want to follow my work, if you want to, you know, be part of my PLN and me to be part of your PLN. So thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so very much, Sophia.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sophia. It was clear listening to you. What a great session. And I can see Professor Bill Littlewood in the audience. Thank you so very much, Bill, for your participation and for considering to attend this session. Really appreciate that. We had a wonderful webinar, a few weeks back with Professor William Littlewood, and it's so great to see him in the audience. Thanks very much, Professor. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat while I, gather some of the questions from the audience. Sevinch Zanalova from Azerbaijan asked, in the context of new digital divide, I'm interested in assessment, continuum, and hybrid teaching. So any ideas on that?
Assessment. About assessment.
Yep.
Assessment is the most challenging aspect of online teaching. And the one, I would say online teaching, we cannot replicate it. What was, in my opinion, wrong is that we try to replicate face-to-face teaching and move it online, keeping the pedagogy of face-to-face, of the face-to-face classroom, and just move it onto Zoom. And this, of course, had so many problems, presented so many problems. Same goes for assessment, but it is even more challenging. So the online environment does not lend itself for the classic, the typical, the traditional test. So we need to find alternative ways of assessment. They exist. We just need to consider them and find them and develop our pedagogies. And this is not easy. It is not easy. I cannot give you quick fixes. For example, if we apply portfolios or alternative ways of assessment and not the typical test online, this needs to reflect the curriculum. We cannot teach to the test and then assess with alternative ways of assessment. So I'm sorry, I cannot give quick fixes, but I think what I'm saying is important. It is important to understand that we need to go deeper when it comes to redesigning the curriculum, when it comes to redesigning our approaches, redefining our approaches.
Yeah, that's great. So the other question, what is the role of digital literacy in engaging learners, and how to measure student engagement?
Students' engagement, again, is the question how digital literacies help with engagement?
Yeah.
Or engagement online when we teach online. So so digital literacies, of course, help with engagement, because a person who knows how to communicate will be more engaged than someone who doesn't know how to communicate online. And when I say communicate, not only orally, written, we talked about codes of communication, we talked about tools, knowing how to use tools. So a person who doesn't have these literacies, of course, is more limited with regards to engagement and communication. But I would say that if the question is about engaging students online, then we also need to think about our approaches. If our approaches, as I said earlier, are the approaches that we need and the techniques that we use, in the face-to-face classroom, then students won't be engaged. We have this embodiment thing, okay? We are used to teaching with people, with physical bodies in the classroom. We are used to teaching, having eye contact with people. And of course, we need to change our techniques to teach equally well without these techniques, with different techniques. Anything else? How to improve English speaking skills? Did I pick that correctly? How could we get access to this book? This book. If you visit my website, you will find information there, Laila. It is by Express Publishing. This is the publisher, but there are information and direct links in my website. Oh, thank you, Helen. Thank you. Thank you. You're a gem.
So other question from Soja Fakhrul from Bangladesh. He asks, what would be alternative innovative approaches to using technology for teaching learning purposes?
Can you repeat, Manula?
Yep.
What would be
Yep.
the strategy?
What would be alternative innovative approaches to using technology for teaching learning purposes?
When we say other, apart from task-based learning,
Mm-hmm.
I would say I don't know if the person asking is a colleague in language teaching, but we talk about the communicative approach, for example. Of course, these approaches don't change. We just need to change our techniques to these approaches. So, for example, if you teach with a communicative approach, if you teach with task-based learning, if you want to be more teacher-centered, student-centered, if you want your classroom to be more student-centered, if you are influenced by social constructivism with regards to pedagogy. So all this can still work. The thing is, not in the same way. But when we say use technology, do we mean use technology in the classroom, in the physical classroom, or in the online classroom? Because there is a variation there. It's not the same. So if you use technology in the face-to-face classroom, then we are talking about a different thing. So you can use technology in the face-to-face classroom, following all these approaches and more approaches, dogma, for example. So you can use any approach you want. You can be very teacher-centered, for example, and use technology. So technology will not change your approach. We say that we are innovative and we use technology. I mean, we are innovative and okay, I use technology, so I'm innovative. No, you can use technology and still be very, very teacher-centered. If you give your students, if we bombard our students with multiple choice exercises and gap fill exercises, where is the innovation exactly? Just because they do it on a computer.
Yeah. And a lot of questions around engagement. Another question from Mohammed Zubairi asked how to ensure effective engagement of students in an online and digital learning program.
Yeah, so first of all, just to say that online can be synchronous or asynchronous. So I suppose that the colleague is referring to synchronous like via Zoom. So there are so many things that we can do, but I would say if I were to pick the top three, I would say engage them with questions, with check-in questions. Every 3 minutes, ask them, vary your technique, ask them to type in the chat, ask them to turn on the mic and speak. Don't make it robotic. I've seen classes, because I observe classes as well, that are very robotic online. So the teacher speaks, and the students interact via the chat. Of course, this, like here, we have so many, I mean, this is a webinar, first of all. It is not a classroom. So it is different. But in a classroom, this would be one-way communication, really. So let them activate the mic. And if it becomes a little bit chaotic, of course, I'm talking about having 20 students, 25 students tops. If you have 40 students or 50 students, this will be too chaotic. But if not, they can just activate the mic and speak as well. Use breakout rooms. Just take advantage of the breakout rooms. Just the warning, just creating the breakout rooms and asking students to go to breakout rooms doesn't mean that they will engage. That the task should be engaging, meaningful. They should have a reason to speak in English. We should set it in a way that that students understand what they have to do. I've seen many breakout rooms that are set in a way that is not adequate. And this is because, don't get me wrong, here is not to criticize the teacher, it's because the teacher assumes that the students have understood, because they explained it in the way that they are used to explaining in the physical classroom, but it's not the same. So I would say instructions need to be on screen. So 2 channels, we explain the instructions and we show the instructions on screen. And then when students are in the breakout room, again, they have access to the instructions, perhaps in a Google Doc. So they know what they have been asked to do.
Great. So Cesar Medina from Colombia, she asked that what practices are effective to promote and improve literacy skills in rural settings?
Yes. So this is an amazing question, I would say. I would start from number 1, from access and basic IT skills. This is where I would start from. I said that it is very difficult to develop digital literacies without access to technology. But I suppose even if access to technology is limited, even if it is low speed, for example, there are things that we can do about that. So we can start from the first that we talked about, from access and basic IT skills, and then from communication, how people can communicate online. Basically, if there is access to the internet, all of these literacies can be developed, not in the same way. You won't teach students how to code. You won't ask students to create, something elaborate, that will need very advanced digital skills. But this doesn't mean that they cannot be creators of content. Whatever we create online, we are creators, so we can teach creativity. They can't create something. They can just, if they have a mobile phone, for example, they can, and I don't mean, the latest one, but a basic smartphone with videos, they can create amazing videos. It is not so much the tool, and it is not so much how sophisticated the technology is, but it is about how this facilitates language learning, so they can create projects and we can still teach students digital literacies and how to learn languages via digital literacies. So thank you very much.
Yes, great. Rolin May from Malaysia asks that best app to use in teaching according to you.
Can you please repeat?
Rolin asks that best application to use in teaching according to you.
The best. So this is a little bit tricky. I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to answer exactly what you asked me for me, but this might not be for you. So I cannot be prescriptive. It all depends on the context. Context is key to everything, I would say, including technology, the technology that we use. So to me, the number one tool that I use with my students is Google Drive. It's simple, it's amazing, and I use it with my students all the time. But because I have Chinese students as well, sometimes I might have Chinese students, I cannot use it simply because they don't have access to Google Drive. So again, this changes. So I might use another tool. I might use Microsoft, for example, tools that are accessible in China. So this depends on your context, your preferences, your students' digital literacies. You might want to start with something, less sophisticated. For example, blogging with students. If you start, for example, from WordPress, it might be more difficult for students to start blogging with WordPress. Just an example, not that it is not a simple tool. When I started blogging with my students, I started with a very, very simple blog that would be easy for students so that I don't spend, I'm not an IT teacher. I don't want to spend half of my class teaching students about technology. I want to teach language and I want to teach digital literacies. It is very, very different. It is very different. Digital literacies doesn't mean technology. So this is my favorite tool, but there are so many tools that I like. It's not my only one.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So Rumeda from Philippines, and what is the negative side of this digital world?
What is?
What is the negative side of this digital world?
The negative side of the digital world. There are
Yes.
so many negative sides, so many negative sides. I talked about digital distractions. I talked about cyberbullying. I talked about digital plagiarism, which is much more serious than, the plagiarism that existed before the digital era, e-safety issues. There are so many negative and dark sides of the internet and of being connected. So the thing is, and this is why we need to be digitally literate to be able to deal with this dark and negative sides and become resilient, because we cannot avoid, once we are exposed to technology, we will be exposed to distractions, we will be exposed to cyber security problems, cyber insecurity problems, e-safety issues. Our students will be exposed to lots of dangers, etc.
Yeah,
malware. But the answer to this is literacy. We need to be educated in order to deal with these issues. The answer is not to stop being exposed.
Yep. Maybe one last question. How can social media be used to promote language learning? It's from Raima Rim Kamoche from Algeria.
Yeah, how can, sorry?
Social media be used to promote language learning?
That's an excellent question. I would say that this depends on your students' age. They should be age appropriate. If you use university students like myself, master's students, for example, we used to have a Facebook group, we use Twitter, you can use Instagram. If you use teenagers or little kids, these are not. I would say that to expose students, if they're over 13, of course, because if they're under 13, it is illegal for students to have a social media account. But you need to help them to develop, the resilience against risks, etc. So I wouldn't suggest it. I would say that with regards to social media, blogging is an amazing tool to use with your students, and depending on their age, make it password protected or password protected, I would say, if you use young learners, or even, have it public, but moderate comments, because people can leave comments that might be inappropriate. So I have used blogging with very, very, very young learners, and it went very well. But I would not expose very young learners to Facebook or Instagram. Not that they are not exposed, already they are, but pedagogically, I wouldn't suggest it, because to do so, you need first to help them to develop the digital literacy so they are resilient and safer. So that's my answer. So thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed being with you, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
It was great. It was a great pleasure to have you at Teacher Development Webinars. Thanks for sharing your expertise. And for those who want to access this recording, and this recording will be available at Teacher Development Webinars YouTube channel, so you can share it with your colleagues if you're interested. And those who are interested to get a certificate for the session, and they can email me at info.tdwebinars@gmail.com. This session was free for all, but the certificate requires some $5 for international audience and ₹300 only for those who are attending it from Pakistan. So for future webinars, you can follow our social media channels. We are available on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And again, this recording will also be available at YouTube channel. I appreciate your participation. Thanks for joining us today. And I would also like to remind you about this COVID-19 crisis, that please take care of yourself. We are seeing these Delta variant cases in Pakistan. So be responsible about your lives. Try avoiding exposure to the crowded places if you can. So yeah, protect yourself as much as you can. Thanks very much. Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.